Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast supported by Pragati, a flagship media initiative of the Takshashila Institution. We're a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like to bring a fresh perspective to Indian affairs and an Indian perspective to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hello and welcome to another episode of All Things Policy, where we discuss policy issues of relevance. I am Priyal Lyncia D'Almeida and I am a research analyst at the Takshashila Institution. And the Takshashila Institution is an independent, non-partisan think tank and a school of public policy. And we have multiple education programs lasting 1 semester and 1 year that are tailored specifically for people like you. They are all online and you can take them from anywhere. Admissions are now open for our 12-week graduate certificate program in public policy, defense and foreign affairs, and technology and policy. And the new cohort, which is starting in September 2022, the applications are open for this cohort and the deadlines for this is on the 27th of August. So if you want to find out more, any further information about this, etc., you can always visit school.takshashila.org.in/GCPP to find out more. So today we are going to talk about the US-Nepal relations. And to give you an introduction on what exactly is happening, on June 12th, General Flynn, who is the commanding general of the United States Army Pacific, concluded his 4-day visit to Nepal. And during his visit, General Flynn had meetings with President Bidya Devi Bhandari, Prime Minister Deuba, and Army Chief General Sharma, among others. However, with the emergence of the controversy surrounding Nepal's intentions of signing of the state partnership program with the US Army, the visit also became controversial. So, what exactly is the significance of General Flynn's visit? Why did the state partnership program, the short form for which is SPP, become so controversial, and why does China fear the growing US-Nepal relationship? To find out more and to talk about it, I am joined by Shrey Khanna, who is a staff research analyst with the Takshashila's Indo-Pacific program, to discuss the recent events surrounding the US-Nepal relationship. Hi, Shrey, and welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Priyal. Regarding the significance of General Flynn's 4-day Nepal visit, I'd say it is part of growing cooperation between US and Nepal, which we're seeing lately. And this visit comes after just last week, US Under Secretary of State, she concluded her 3-day Nepal visit last week, and this was the highest level visit by a US official since 2012. And then even last year in November, there was a visit by Donald Lu, US Assistant Secretary of State, visit by MCC Compact Operations Vice President Fatima Sumar also occurred in September last year. And even this year in April, there was a congressional delegation led by Senator Kirsten. So this visit of General Flynn that is happening after so many high-profile visits already that have happened, and Nepal's Prime Minister is also he has to visit US this year.
Right.
So that visit is also on the card. The significance part is that while the cooperation is growing, but for example, the state partnership program, there was a controversy which came to fore after some sections of Nepal's media. They circulated a document which was dubbed as a draft agreement between Nepal Army and Utah National Guard. So state partnership program is essentially a program in which the US Army, one of its National Guard of one of the US state, it partners with a country, and then they promote disaster management skills and provide grants as well. And this aspect of the state partnership program, the SPP, it became fairly controversial in Nepal. The communist parties, they were opposing such Nepal's partnership with the US on this. There were social media campaigns that this is another stage of US domination of Nepal. Next, what we are going to see is US boots on ground, and so there was a big controversy surrounding it.
Right. So, like you talked about what state partnership program is, right? So, what is the issue surrounding it, and like can you go deeper into why is it so controversial?
Yeah. So the debate on the SPP, it took center stage, as I said, after this media document was circulated, and then U.S. Embassy called it fake document, and it pointed out that U.S. had accepted requests previously in 2015 and 2017. Now at this point, Nepal was saying that it never made request to join SPP, and then another document came as one of the letter dated somewhere around October 2015. It came to fore, and then in that Nepal's army chief Rajendra Chetri, he was requesting the Nepal army to be partner with the US Army. This was happening after that massive earthquake that happened. And at that time, government was of Prime Minister Oli, who is now in opposition and who is leading the charge that US is going to let's dominate Nepal. So that sort of hypocrisy was evident. Interestingly, the current government, which is led by Nepal Congress, they did not know that even it was during Oli's tenure that this request was made. So the incompetency was evident on and the hypocrisy that each side was blaming the other side, and when they were in power, they wanted this thing to happen. And
Right.
the issue related to this is essentially that Nepal's ratification of this state partnership program will eventually lead to increased U.S. military presence in Nepal, and
Right.
many of the many people in Nepal, they see SPP as an extension of US's Indo-Pacific strategy, which is designed against China.
Right.
So, for example, after SPP, the decision not to go, the decision of not going with the SPP was taken. Wang Wenbin, who is the spokesperson of China's foreign ministry, he commended Nepali government's decision to not to move ahead on SPP. He said that we commend the Nepali government's decision, and he said that this is a military and security initiative closely linked to the Indo-Pacific strategy. So he focused upon the fact that the Nepal has to have a non-aligned or a balanced foreign policy and not to be part of the SPP. So China is also very concerned regarding that, and this activity is also we can see what happened during the MCC compact time. MCC is a millennium cooperation. There's a grant which was promised by US, and
Right.
there was a 500 million grant, and there was opposition in Nepal regarding that MCC, whether to take that grant from the US, and this was pending for many years, for 5 years almost.
Mhm.
And finally, this year in February, it was ratified, and there was again a massive backlash, protest against the ratification. There was a big social media campaign where pictures were out that, and it was a disinformation campaign as well. There were pictures showing that U.S. Army roaming around in Qatar, they have come and they are going to take over the country.
Right.
So, and even at that time, like, China was very much concerned about that US and Nepal are coming closer, and US and Nepal signing MCC compact, and it was a big concern for China even at that time.
Right.
So, but as I said, the change of government, especially under Prime Minister Shrey Deuba, it is very evident that the cooperation with US is growing, and at the same time, cooperation with India is growing. And what we see is that the China turn of it has slowed down. The BRI is slow. So yeah.
Like, you explained very beautifully, like in a very detailed way, what exactly is, the SSP and why it's controversial and all. I want to go further deeper into this, but before we go deeper into this, let's take a short break and we will be right back. Hello and welcome to this episode of ATP where we were discussing about the US and Nepal relations. Now, Shrey, you talked about what is the significance of General Flynn's visit to Nepal, right, previously. And also, you talked about what the state partnership program is and why it's controversial. And one of the things you touched upon is also the China's concern about, like, the growing US Nepal relations. So, In this aspect, I know very briefly you touched about it in your previous points and stuff, but can you go deeper into why is China so concerned about it? Like, what does it exactly fear if the US-Nepal relations actually really solidify in the future?
Yeah. So China actually calls what US is doing in Nepal an act of coercive diplomacy. It sees that even the MCC ratification, when Nepal ratified MCC, it said that it is because of US pressure that the US is blackmailing Nepal to get it signed, and there was much opposition in China. There were articles in Global Times. Even Hu Yangqi, she's an ambassador to Nepal from Chinese side,
Right.
and she was criticized. She was criticized for for her failure to stop this from happening. So China calls it coercive diplomacy. The concerns there regarding that once these sort of cooperation starts happening, then slowly US will develop strong military to military relations with Nepal. And what we have to remember is that Nepal has a border with China. So that border connectivity, that geographical element is still there. That if eventually these fears of U.S. Army presence in Nepal, if it comes to fore, then there can be a potential problem for China, especially with the problem on the LAC that they have with India. So that is one concern. Though that
Right.
it is a long shot, China has quite a fair amount of influence in
Yeah.
Nepal. The kind of social media campaigns or disinformation campaigns that have happened against India or against America in the past. So,
That.
and they have quite a good amount of resources in Nepal. Nepal's major political parties are communist. So, it is a long shot that whether it is going to happen, but it is one of the important part of what plays into the affair. Also, regarding political parties, I think China is recognizing its limitations in controlling Nepali political parties, because if you
Right.
see now, the Nepal's top political parties, the communist parties, they have they have far more seats than Nepali Congress, and
Right.
it was in but what we see now is the government by Nepali Congress, because of that massive infighting between the health section, which is one faction of Congress Party, and police section, and
Hmm.
Madhav Kumar's Nepal section. So some of these communist parties, they have allied with Nepali Congress, and Nepali Congress is the prime minister. So
Right.
this limitation that even though there is parties are there, it's not essentially it is not essentially going to help them to the level, to the extent that they want it to
Right.
happen. So that it is also a recognition of their limitations in controlling Nepali political parties, and
Hmm.
also it is related to Pacific strategy, because US released the Indo-Pacific strategy earlier this year, and the US Indo-Pacific strategy, one of the stated objective is to support India's continued rise and regional leadership.
Right.
Right. And if this US-Nepal relationship is going upwards, and India-US's relationship is also going upward, then they see that ultimately it's China's influence which is going to suffer if US
Right.
is promoting India as a regional leader. One more thing that I think China has in mind is the Tibetan issue, because there is
Hmm.
a large number of Tibetan refugees which are living in Nepal, and
Right.
because of Chinese pressure, Nepali state used against them. So, and Uzra Zia, who visited Nepal earlier this year, and she is also she's someone who collaborates on democracy and human rights. So that point is also there, that US's support to Tibetan cause, its meeting with the Tibetan diaspora, or
Right.
Tibetan government in exile. If that happens simultaneously when it's growing its relationship with Nepal,
Yeah.
then the Tibetan issue in Nepal also it may get some support, or China may lose out on the kind of influence through which it can curtail the Tibetan activity. So that
Right.
may be another reason why China fears increasing US presence in.
Right. That's actually very interesting because, like, generally when we think of like China's concern about US, this thing, you will only think about it in terms of its power in the Asian continent, right? The fact that it
Right.
also has something to lose, and the Tibetan side is also something that I didn't really think about. But thank you so much, Shrey, for this really informative talk and like this conversation that you had with me. This actually, because like a lot of times we generally read news, but we don't really know what exactly is happening. So hearing your perspective on this was very enlightening.
Thank you, Priya.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shrey. To all our listeners, I hope you had a good time listening to this particular episode. And for more episodes, please stay tuned in, which will come subsequently in the coming days. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
If you liked our show, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can tune into them on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also follow IVM on social media. The handle is @IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And hey, if you'd like to dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs, check us out at our Twitter handle @TakshashilaINST or our website takshashila.org.in.